The mystery of a generation. There is a strange truth about those who grew up in the 1970s. They possess a psychological genetic code that young people born after the 2000s can hardly understand. It is a generation molded by silence, wild freedom, and dangers that, if encountered by a parent today, would likely result in an immediate police investigation. Imagine a morning where you grab your bicycle and disappear for 5 hours. No phone, no GPS, not a single thread of communication with your family. Your parents didn't panic. They didn't call the police. They only gave you one rule: be home before the streetlights come on. That intentional neglect created something incredibly rare in the modern world: a fierce, natural self-confidence. The children of the 70s learned to navigate the world with their eyes instead of a screen, and solved troubles with instinct instead of Google. They carry a strange inner voice that always whispers, "I'll figure it out," even when facing the harshest challenges. Today at PHILOSYX, we will decode what created the steel backbone of this generation, and why is the modern world making us weaker? Legacy from post-war ghosts. To truly understand the psychology of the 70s generation, we cannot just look at them, we must look at those who raised them. Most were children of a much harsher generation, those who lived through World War II or grew up in its immediate ruins. These were fathers and mothers who saw real fear, real hunger, and ultimate sacrifice. Psychology calls this transmission through osmosis. Parents back then didn't talk much about emotions. They didn't cuddle or use flowery praise. They taught their children through silence and the act of survival. They didn't break down. They didn't complain. They simply endured and moved forward. From this, the children of the 70s grew up with a lesson not found in textbooks. Responsibility was not a choice. It was the very oxygen of existence. If something broke, you found a way to fix it. If you fell, you didn't wait for someone to pick you up. You brushed off the dust and stood up yourself. Their maturity didn't come from soft skills courses. It came from watching the adults around them carry the weight of life quietly and resiliently. They learned to be their own anchor before they even knew the definition of the word pressure. Self-reliance and the order of repair. Living in the world of the 70s, you would soon realize a harsh but powerful truth. The only helping hand you can find is at the end of your own arm. This generation forged a kind of resilience we call self-confidence. It wasn't the kind of confidence built on hollow online praise, but a confidence distilled from 1,000 trials, errors, and repairs. Look at how they treated the physical world. If a toy broke, a bike chain snapped, or a radio failed, they didn't look for an order button to replace it. They took it apart, tinkering with screwdrivers and tape. This philosophy of repair rather than replace seeped into their problem-solving mindset. It taught them that every difficulty has a structure, and if you are patient enough to understand that structure, you will find the way out. For those born in the 70s, responsibility was not a burden or a punishment, but an inevitable part of being alive. They didn't grow up thinking someone will come help me, but rather, I will be the one to help myself. This toughness makes them appear mentally older than their age. They didn't need a user manual for life because they spent their entire childhood writing that manual with the scratches on their own hands. The bridge between two worlds. There is something almost poetic about those born in this era. They are the only bridge connecting two completely different continents. One foot is planted in the old world, slow, raw, and tangible. The other is in the new world, fast, loud, and encoded by digital commands. They carry the memory of a life without internet, without screens, without notification pings interrupting their train of thought. But simultaneously, they are witnessing a younger generation drowning in that very flood of information. This is why when talking to someone from the 70s, you feel a distinct difference. They have presence. Their confidence doesn't come from trying to impress others or winning an invisible race on social media. They don't need 1,000 likes to know their value, because their worth was stamped by years of cycling through dusty roads and having face-to-face conversations without filters. They stand firm in the heart of the digital storm because they know a secret the modern world has forgotten. True strength doesn't lie in your connection speed to the outside world, but in the stability of the connection within yourself. The tragedy of abundance. Now, place the stability of the 70s alongside the reality of those born after 2000. If the previous generation faced physical scarcity, this generation is suffering a more cruel tragedy: abundance. They held a smartphone before they learned to make eye contact. From the moment they wake up until they close their eyes, their brains are attacked by a massive flood of data. The amount of information they absorb in a single day equals what someone in the 70s received in an entire week. The result? A generation that is extremely smart and creative, yet in a constant state of emotional exhaustion. They aren't tired from manual labor, they are tired from never-ending social comparison. Every notification, every glamorous photo of someone else on social media unintentionally plants seeds of self-doubt and anxiety. Even when they lie down to rest, their hands are still scrolling, their eyes still watching. That isn't relaxation, it's passive consumption that keeps the nervous system on high alert. They are living in a world moving too fast for the evolutionary limits of the human brain. They aren't abandoned by their parents, they are abandoned in an ocean of information, struggling to swim against waves of expectations and digital illusions. Conclusion: strength comes from being tested. Ultimately, when we weigh these two generations, we realize a simple but heavy truth. Strength does not come from protection or comfort, it comes from being tested. The 70s generation was fortunate to have a rough childhood, where real-world friction tempered them into an undefeatable mindset against adversity. Meanwhile, today's generation is fighting a more invisible and cunning enemy: overstimulation and social media loneliness. The question isn't which generation is better, but what can we learn from each other? Perhaps the youth need to learn how to disconnect to find the stillness of the 70s, and the older generation can share their composure to help the young navigate the digital storm. So my question for you is, between a life lacking protection but rich in freedom, and a life full of comfort but burdened by invisible pressure, which do you think is harsher? Were you born before 1980 or after? Leave your story in the comments, as every perspective is a precious piece in our journey to understand humanity. If this video made you think differently, hit subscribe. We will go deeper into the mysteries of the mind in the next episodes. I am PHILOSYX. Thank you for listening.